traffic crossing Shannon Bridge is busy and Ballycommon Avenue northbound is slow between the M20 and Ballycommon roundabout. Finally, to County Clare, the Clare Road in Ennis will have traffic management between Westfields roundabout and the entrance to Abbey Court today and tomorrow due to works. That's your latest traffic update.
Louise, thank you very much. It's 7 minutes past 8 and John S. Doyle is back with what it says in the papers.
Post is the main story for two papers. The Postal Service's annual report was brought to Cabinet yesterday by Communications Minister Patrick O'Donovan, and there are different ways of looking at it. The Irish Examiner says that An Post could be forced to change the frequency or speed of postal deliveries because of costs and changing consumer habits. The company made a profit of €5.6 million last year, up from a €20 million loss in 2023. However, core mail volumes fell by 7.6% in line with global trends. But An Post is on the brink, says the alarming lead headline on the Irish Daily Mail. The Postal Service is facing a dire financial situation, the words of one cabinet minister, with its cash reserves dropping below €1 million for the first time ever. Craig Hughes quotes unnamed political sources as saying that there would be no bailout for An Post. A coalition row could be brewing, however, with Minister of State Michael Healy-Rae, who is also a postmaster, advocating for more funding for the network, he says. RTE provides the lead story for the Irish Independent. Fionn Sheehan reports that the broadcaster's management have been summoned to a meeting with government officials to explain themselves. After 48 of 104 recommendations following the Ryan Tubridy affair have not progressed as planned. A government source, unnamed, told the paper that if this was any other government organisation, RTE would be excoriating them for lack of progress and lack of delivery. RTE has got a must-try harder mark on its report card, says Sheehan. The Irish Daily Mail leads with the report that the family of a wealthy County Offaly farmer, the late Joe Grogan, have made a last-ditch bid to have his death investigated by Gardaí. Mr. Grogan died just a day after he got married to his part-time carer, Lisa Flaherty. Sean McCarthy reports that there were gasps at Offaly's coroner's court yesterday when a lawyer for Mr. Grogan's family suggested a possible unlawful killing verdict. But the coroner rejected the plea and said the farmer most likely died from an infection, having had cancer. The presidential election race gathered pace yesterday, says the Irish Times, with Fine Gael nominating former European Commissioner Mairead McGuinness and independent TD Catherine Connolly expected to launch her candidacy today. Jack Horgan-Jones reports that the businessman Declan Ganley is said to be contacting TDs and senators about support for a potential run. And in the Independent, it is reported that another former European Commissioner, Maura Geoghegan-Quinn, has emerged as a potential candidate for Fianna Fáil. She's the one to win it for us, said a party source unnamed. But in the Mail, Sarah McGuinness quotes another unnamed source in Fianna Fáil, described as well-placed, who said the party has opened lines of communications with Packy Bonner, soccer legend, as a potential candidate. And not only that, but the party has had conversations with fellow Irish soccer legend Niall Quinn. And if that's not enough, another Fianna Fáil figure said nobody should rule out Micheál Martin running. McGuinness writes, and Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou MacDonald has not ruled herself out. Katie Taylor should be heading for the park according to the Irish Daily Star, but in her case it's Croke Park. The paper is quoting Mary Lou MacDonald, who said in the Dáil yesterday that Katie should be given the chance for a farewell boxing match there before she retires. The Examiner highlights the news that the government is set to delay the introduction of health warning labels on alcoholic drinks until 2029, which you may have heard discussed earlier in the programme. The expected deferral is a sign of just how nervous the government is about the present trading and economic environment, Pat Leahy writes in the Times. Labelling is not a problem in Portrush, but there may be another alcoholic difficulty. In the Irish News, Conor Shields reports that golf fans descending on the town for the Open are paying £8 for a pint of Guinness in one bar there. It is thought to be the most expensive pint of stout in Northern Ireland.
John S.
in-store or online. Tesco. Every little helps. Available in most stores. Prices vary and express. DRS applies.
Oliver Callan on RTE Radio 1 and the RTE Radio app.
This morning we continue our tour of the Northwest. We'll be coming live from Black Sod Lighthouse. We're talking dark skies, sea life, and of course the history of this amazing building, all between 9 and 10.
You're welcome back. It's just 13 minutes past 8. This is a season of war. This is a time of crisis. From Sudan to Ukraine, from the Sahel to Myanmar, from the Democratic Republic of Congo to Haiti, violence has become the defining currency of our age. Those were the words of United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, when he addressed the UN Security Council recently, pleading for aid on behalf of the 123 million people forcibly displaced from their homes worldwide. He joins us in studio now. Good morning, Mr. Grande. Thank you very much for coming in to us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, you're here to meet with both the Taoiseach and Taoiseach today. What will your message to them be?
Let me say, first of all, thank you. I will say thank you, Ireland, for the extraordinary support that you have provided to my organizations, but more importantly, to refugees worldwide in these past few years. I've been in this job for almost 10 years. I'm about to leave the job at the end of 2025, and it was important for me to come and express this gratitude. But then I will say, keep it up. Keep up your financial, moral, and political support to victims of violence worldwide. The crisis you mentioned all continue. There's even more than that, and we need countries like Ireland to continue to speak on behalf of those that are impacted by the disasters worldwide.
I know you've also been briefing our President, Michael D. Higgins, and the Minister for Justice, Jim O'Callaghan. Now, recently, Mr. O'Callaghan, he spoke about those who seek international protection in Ireland, and he said the numbers keep growing, and it's not tenable for us to continually get more accommodation. What do you say to countries like Ireland who are already experiencing a housing crisis? Many argue that we simply can't take any more.
I think that I fully appreciate this challenge, also because Ireland has always maintained high standards for people seeking asylum in the country. But yes, the pressure is high, although a little bit less this year. The statistics tell us that the numbers are decreasing a little bit. And I think that the decision of the government to join the European Pact on Migration and Asylum, to opt in, Ireland had that option, is a good one, because it's only by sharing more widely the burden, that's the purpose of the pact, that the pressure can be more equitably shared between at least all the European countries. That's a good step in the right direction, and we're working with the government in designing the laws and the procedures that will allow for this hopefully improved way to receive people. But once again, I would say it's important that this example of welcoming people in need is maintained. Remember, 75% of the refugees are not in the rich countries, are not in Europe, are not in North America, they're in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia. So those are the countries to which everybody has to give the example of good welcome, because the burden is mostly there.
But do you accept that there is a need for the wealthier Western countries to control migration if it is placing undue pressure on domestic economies, and worse again, perhaps fueling xenophobia and far-right movements?
I think that what is very important today for all countries is to better manage these population flows. And we should not always look only at the last borders, the borders of Europe, of the rich countries, but go upstream and look at what happens to these people all the way from their countries of origin. Be more forceful in addressing the root causes, conflict first and foremost for refugees, but also climate change, poverty, and other causes of population movements, and then look at what happens along the routes. These days, international aid is being curtailed everywhere, not by Ireland, luckily, but by the United States and many European countries. Now, if you give less
resources to in situation where people are on the move, people will move on. So there's a contradiction between wanting to diminish the flows and cutting aid.
And I do want to return to that topic. But first, I want to ask you about another issue. You are representing refugees, and most of the world's refugees, they can at least flee from war or disaster. But in Gaza, there are 2 million people who are trapped in a conflict that we've heard international doctors described as a slaughterhouse for civilian. Now, I know that the UNHCR does not have a mandate for Gaza, but the body that does, UNRWA, they've been effectively prevented from operating. What can be done to help?
I could not agree more with you. And yes, UNHCR doesn't have mandate because UNRWA deals with these issues there. But as a former head of UNRWA myself, I can tell you that every day waking up to the horror news of more children killed while trying to get some water or food is beyond words. One cannot find words to describe this anymore, but the appeal to the Israeli authorities is always the same. Give access to people that are competent, that know how to distribute aid, and of course cease killing civilians. And in the end, what is important is that we should not forget, we should continue to make a plea for peace, a peace process, absurd as it may sound now, to resume. That's the only way forward for this to stop and for this not to resume again, even if it stops with a ceasefire. This is the most important thing to try and put all our efforts in at the moment. But it is horrifying.
Many human rights and UN bodies have spoken about a genocide being carried out by Israel in Gaza. Now, Israel, of course, denies this. But despite all of these reports and calling out, no concrete actions have been taken by the international community. Many Western nations are continuing to supply weapons to Israel. Are you concerned that there is a growing disrespect for the United Nations and a growing loss of faith in the international community to uphold international law?
I'm definitely very concerned by all of that, and I think all of this is happening. This is what I discussed with President Higgins yesterday. The rules-based order that was established after the Second World War, for good reason, for that never to happen again, is being dismantled willingly. We mentioned the decline in aid, in contributions to organizations like mine. I think this is not just done for economic, financial reason. It is not done because there is a need for more effectiveness. All this may be partly true, but that's not the real reason. The real reason is that the international multilateral system, which is based on rules that everybody must respect, even in war, is being weakened, is being actually dismantled. And what is the perspective? Do we want to go back to the pre-UN world? We know what happened in between the two world wars and what came out of that. I think we should all be very worried. We should all be more worried about that. When we vote, when we encourage politicians to make decisions, we should be mindful not only of our domestic concerns, which are very important, but the international concerns as well.
You mentioned international aid there. The new administration in the United States has effectively dismantled USAID. They were a huge donor to aid programs around the world. Has the dismantling of USAID directly affected the UNHCR?
The UNHCR, this is a bit technical, is not funded by USAID but by the State Department. But all of the aid operations have been suspended by the United States. Back in January, at the beginning of this administration, they're conducting a review of all the partnerships that they have established over the years. The U.S. has been, for many decades, by far the largest contributor to humanitarian assistance. For example, in the case of UNHCR, 40% of our contributions came from the United States. Now, I fully appreciate that a rebalancing may be necessary necessary and even useful, but this cannot be at the expense of life-saving assistance to people. You know, health programs in Africa, for example, not just through UNHCR, but in general, are being decimated as we speak. And it's not just the United States. Many European countries that have to now spend more money on defense, have to look at the impact of tariffs, are taking money away from aid. I appreciate that these budgetary challenges are real, but to weaken international assistance is a strategic mistake.
As you mentioned, you've been involved in refugee and humanitarian work for over 30 years now. How do you see the current situation when compared to the past? Are refugees in a worse or a better situation globally?
You know, I've been in this work for more than 40 years. I started as a volunteer more than 40 years ago, so I've seen a lot of crises, even devastating one, the genocide in Rwanda, the Balkan Wars, and many other difficult situations. So horrors, unfortunately, have happened, but it's the present context, the weakening, as we said, of the rules-based order, the flaunting of these rules with full, without any sense of shame in a way, the legitimacy that has been given to violations of human rights, the scale of this I have not seen in these 40 years, and that is very worrying.
United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, thank you very much for joining us. It is 24 minutes past 8.
There is a stark headline on this morning's Irish Daily Mail newspaper. An Post on the brink, it says. Well, An Post CEO David Redmond is on the line now, and you're very welcome to the programme. Is it on the brink?
No, that report is utter garbage. And here in Italy on my holidays, I'm absolutely furious to read something like that. The company presented its results. The results were presented to Cabinet yesterday. They showed the highest revenue we've ever had, over $1 billion revenue for the first time. They showed that we grew our earnings from 38 million to 55 million. They showed that our net profit was at 10 million. The company is performing extremely well. We've got the highest level of parcel growth of any postal operator in Europe. So I just don't understand.
Well, I'm reading directly now from the newspaper this morning. It says that Communications Minister Patrick O'Donovan briefed the Cabinet on the bleak financial realities facing the state's postal service. The Cabinet was told that without the significant once-off revenue generated from election-related posts last year, when general, local and European elections were held, the organisation would have made a substantial loss. Is that true?
on the brink, then they're going to think, well, maybe we should go with someone else. So it's reckless in the extreme. So look, I'm talking to government about it. I hope there's just some big misunderstanding somewhere. And the company, as I say, is doing really well. Yes, I'm very clear that we say we want our borrowing cap lifted, which was put in place in 1984. So it's way out of date. And we need greater flexibility of our working capital. We need some things like that. We want government to approve certain changes to regulations. These are normal conversations. And as I say, coming from a position where the company has had one of its best years.
So you're not on the brink, and yet in May, according to the Irish Postmasters Union, they made a submission to government looking for more than the 10 million annual funding from government, which you say you need as well. But that submission was carried out, it says, by Grant Thornton, and it described the postal network as being at tipping point.
Okay, so, well, they're talking about the post office network, not the whole Von Post. The post office network is about 20% Von Post. The post office network is largely composed of independent contractors, postmasters. And the postmasters got a subsidy from government because government wants to keep as many post offices open, and they want to get that increased, and we support that. But that's about supporting rural post offices. That's not about the viability of the company. It's nothing to do about it. But it's the company of Von Post is largely nowadays is mail and parcels and financial services. By the way, our financial services grew last year, and our post office network grew last year in revenues, and they're all from the audited accounts.
So is there a threat, though, to post offices? The union says up to 400 might close.
No, I don't think no. And look, no, I certainly don't. And I was at the Oireachtas hearing with that. Look, there's always a threat at some time that something can happen. But no, we have no plan to close post offices, no plus. No plan. We occasionally relocate or we do something. Very occasionally a post office will close because somebody retires and we can't get somebody to replace them. But the post office network is doing well. And it will continue to do well, but quite rightly, postmasters are saying to government, you want us to do more government services, pay us for them, pay us an economic rate for them. And that's what the postmasters are saying to government, and I support them in that. But no, there's no threat.
Thank you very much indeed, CEO of Van Post, David McRedmond. It's 8:30. This is Morning Ireland, and Brian's here with the news update.
Thank you, Audrey. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, says international aid is now being reduced in many countries and has appealed for the aid to continue. Speaking on this programme, he said he understood there were budgetary restraints in many countries, but in some cases the contributions were being decimated. A proposed change to EU agricultural funding has raised fears among Irish farmers of a reduction of up to 30% in the financial supports they receive. The change would involve merging common agricultural policy funding with other funds in a radical overhaul of how farmers receive financial supports from the European Union budget. The Irish Farmers Association said it believes the change would result in funding being channeled to sectors other than farming. A survey suggests that parents and guardians of children are bearing a greater financial burden in the back-to-school costs this year than last year. The research was carried out by the Irish League of Credit Unions. Around 730 parents responded to the survey. The US President Donald Trump will meet the Prime Minister of Qatar today to discuss negotiations over a ceasefire deal in Gaza. Qatar has been a key mediator in contacts between Israel and Hamas. Now the weather forecast, scattered outbreaks of rain and drizzle will push up from the southwest today. It'll be driest in Ulster with spells of hazy sunshine. Highest temperatures will range from 17 to 22 degrees.
Thanks, Brian. Gail Conway is back now with the business headlines.
Thanks, Joan. The Taoiseach Minister for Foreign Affairs, Simon Harris, will hold a meeting today with senior representatives from the pharmaceutical sector based in the United States. Almost 50,000 people are employed in pharma in Ireland. The online meeting comes as the EU finalises countermeasures in the event of the US imposing 30% tariffs on the EU from the 1st of August. Britain's annual rate of consumer price inflation rose to 3.6% in June from 3.4% in May, above expectations for the rate to remain unchanged. UK inflation has risen steadily since touching a three-year low of 1.7% last September. In May, the Bank of England forecast it would peak at 3.7% in September, almost twice the central bank's 2% target. AIB has launched its first fully digital investment advice tool for customers. Research from the bank found 3/4 of Irish adults use their mobile app to manage their day-to-day finances, but just under 2/3 have never invested. Looking now at the currencies, where €1 buys you $1 and 16.2 cents and 86.7 pence sterling.